Ubisoft is trying to rush into the NFT game with their new Quartz initiative, but so far it has proven more detrimental than anything. The amount of negative PR that they've gotten is pretty severe, with the trailer so mass disliked that Ubisoft just decided to enlist the trailer. There are ridiculous conditions to claim some of these NFTs, like for this helmet having to play 600 plus hours, which further diminishes incentive to go after them. Developers have expressed their disdain against the company's push for NFTs, with many not understanding how this is going to benefit games, and also many fearing that the push for NFTs will force developers to design their games around trying to push NFTs, thereby compromising design even more than, microtransactions and loot boxes have already done. The French Union called out Ubisoft, calling their NFT scheme useless, costly, and ecologically mortifying, all of which I agree with. The boss insists, Yves Guillemot, the CEO, insists that this is just the beginning, that NFTs are the future, but isn't able to properly explain or express how this is going to be beneficial to players or to the landscape of gaming, aside from executives' additional ability to line their pockets. And on top of all that, the Quartz NFTs have proven thus far, based on the data we currently have, to be slow in its sales, in its engagement levels. People just don't seem to be interested in Ubisoft Quartz right now. All that has gained tons of media attention, and the general outlook is that so far Ubisoft Quartz crypto NFT endeavors have been nothing short of a failure and proven more harmful than beneficial for the company. And this was something that Ubisoft was recently interviewed about by news outlet Decrypt, who recently released an article whose headline reads, "After backlash, Ubisoft calls gaming NFTs a major change that will take time." Of course, they didn't exactly explain what the major change entails, what new avenues it offers in terms of game design and just making games better instead of bolstering monetization schemes and business aspects. This was an interview done alongside the announcement that they're going to be aligning themselves with Aleph.im, with their official website claiming that by using Aleph.im, data storage and business logic runs on our unstoppable decentralized network instead of a centralized service such as AWS or Google Cloud. And this article does bring up how Ubisoft fans, or just gaming enthusiasts in general, have called the limited edition digital items that they've released as part of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, the current guinea pig for Ubisoft Quartz and their Digits NFTs, pointless or a cynical trend chase. What else can we call it when they have yet to present a tangible argument for how the players will benefit? All the monetary stuff aside, how is this going to improve our games? It doesn't seem like it really will, because that's not the goal with NFT implementation, just as how that was not the goal with microtransactions and loot box implementation when that was the gold rush a couple years back and still continues to be. Decrypt specifically spoke to Didier Genevois, Ubisoft's blockchain technical director, and when asked about the current sentiment surrounding NFTs, the backlash against Ubisoft, and how poorly received Quartz has been, here's what he had to say. "We have received a lot of feedback since the announcement, and we hear both the encouragement and the concerns." Concerns is underplaying exactly the kind of feedback that they're getting, which is in large part admonishment and a hard rejection against this endeavor. People don't want NFTs in their games. They don't want to conceive what kinds of business schemes companies will construct around this technology. They just want to play games. And Ubisoft, as much as they advertise player choice, isn't actually giving us the choice, because even with all of the feedback against them saying Ubisoft Quartz is a bad idea, we don't want game design to be influenced by the gold rush for NFTs, they choose to continue implementing them, saying, "Trust us, just wait, give it time, and you'll love it." But it's also your choice. Except it's not really. Companies drive their own business moves regardless of the backlash involved, so long as they have money to gain, so long as their pockets will be lined up by this initiative, regardless of their negative effect on gaming or the customers. We understand where the sentiment towards the technology comes from. No, you don't. You don't care to understand. All you care about is chasing a monetarily lucrative trend, and we need to keep taking it into consideration every step of the way. You have certainly not done a good job at that. Lavoie continued, this experiment is meant to understand how the value proposition of decentralization can be received and embraced by our players. We know it is a major change that will take time, but we will stay true to our 3 principles. A Ubisoft higher-up having the audacity to bring up the word principles to describe Ubisoft is laughable when you consider the immoral ways that they've pursued monetization through microtransactions, when you consider the fact that employees right now are suffering from a toxic work culture of harassment, misconduct, abuse, and discrimination, and Ubisoft, despite all of that having been exposed earlier than Activision Blizzard, have somehow done less than Activision Blizzard to address these issues. And Activision Blizzard hasn't done much, and what they have done, they've only executed because their hand were forced by protesting employees. Ubisoft, though, they're being stubborn about just burying all of these issues under the rug and looking towards the future without consideration of the victims who continue to live through the traumatic work environment that Ubisoft set up for them by enabling abusers, by defending abusers. And Yves Guillemot has barely done anything to address these issues. He's come out on camera a couple of times, but never fully apologized himself, saying, it's my fault. He's just said, things are going to improve, trust me. And employees have expressed throughout the past couple months and years that not a whole lot has really changed and that their demands have gone on deaf ears. So spare me your BS about the company having so-called principles. If you can't be principled on how you treat human beings or how you monetize customers, I sure as hell will not believe that you will have any sort of moral obligation or principles when it comes to NFTs, yet another monetization avenue. But yeah, according to Lavoie, there are 3 principles for NFTs are, quote, use the tech responsibly. They can't even make video games responsibly, and we're expected to believe they're going to use NFTs, technology prone to scams, responsibly. Okay. Build a safe environment. Again, a technology that has fostered money laundering and scams and theft of art. Apparently, this is going to pave the road to a safe environment, especially with games now becoming much more monetizable, with real-world economics seeping further and further into our games and turning them more into investments rather than a form of artistic escape and an immersive way to have fun. Then we have the second principle, only leverage energy-efficient proof-of-stake blockchains. Now, in terms of the technological aspects of that and how energy efficient they can actually become, the blockchain technology, that's not something that I can speak to. What I do know is that so far it does feel like energy is being wasted on a technology that feels pretty useless and one that only a few, the scammers, stand to benefit from. And then the last principle is focus on meaningful value propositions for players that benefit their gaming experience. I mean, this is exactly what they promised with the microtransactions for their premium AAA games, where they say we're doing you a favor by allowing you to buy time savers instead of just making, extra XP earnings and faster paced leveling. Just an option you can trigger so that you can tailor the experience based on how you want to play instead of having to pay for an intentionally introduced problem with, extended grind that you have to pay to solve by buying boosters that are called time savers. Just basic features and what would have in the past been unlockables, locked behind monetization schemes. If you think that's not the road that Ubisoft is headed towards with NFTs, just an additional layer of microtransactions, then all due respect, I don't think you've been paying attention to this company. Their microtransactions already feel like a scam, so I'm not about to believe that their NFTs will be any different. I mean, the way they're executing it now already feels like a scam. 600 plus hours to claim one type of item, the helmet specifically, and then the only unique identifier for these items being a number etched on them that's not going to be visible during gameplay. And they claim decentralization, the value proposition that can offer to players. But here's the thing, while the trading of NFTs, that is decentralized and can happen on a number of storefronts, what those NFTs represent, the actual item itself, the in-game item, will only be confined to Ubisoft's games, and maybe specifically to those games. Ghost Recon Breakpoint NFTs cannot be used in other Ubisoft titles or other titles from other companies, and I don't know what incentive there be for companies to open up all their games so that NFTs of in-game items can be transferred across franchises. I don't foresee a scenario where a Ghost Recon Breakpoint helmet NFT will one day be transferable to frickin' Last of Us or to Halo or to Mario and Zelda. You know what I mean? Like, there have to be some mass deals worked out across the entire network of the gaming industry's publishers to make true decentralization of the items the NFTs represent happen. I don't foresee that happening, and so the use cases of these NFTs are incredibly limited to the specific games or platforms that the companies who have established the NFTs have put together, have erected. If you buy an NFT from a Ubisoft game but aren't part of that game, don't play that game, then that NFT is just an investment, a speculative investment that has no tangible use. And that also raises fears that if you own an NFT for an in-game item of a specific game that one day gets shut down, what happens to that item? It's going to be gone, and the NFT for it will be meaningless because that item can only be used for that specific game that's now been shut down. So scenarios like that are things that people are contemplating, and reasonably so. Now, Decrypt tries to claim that the goal is that other video game NFTs can potentially also be interoperable assets, thus enabling their use in multiple games and online platforms. But again, from companies needing financial incentive to let other games' items seep into their games, to the fact that there are probably going to be technical limitations given different engines operate differently, and having those items transfer over, that's not going to be as simple as just flipping a switch. There are modifications that have to be made to all the various games that link to all of the other games in order to make this work. Combine all of these factors, and this just doesn't seem like a thing that's going to be possible in the near future, or something that companies across the board will be on board for. I guess only time will tell. But this just feels like a speculative pipe dream that companies are trying to hype to get people to believe in the so-called hype of NFTs. But Lavoie insists that our main objective with Ubisoft Quartz is to showcase the true value of decentralization to our players. Aleph.im played a key role in the realization of our vision by allowing us to go one step further and decentralize the storage of the digits, video asset, and metadata. Their inability to actually provide specifics goes to show that they're scrambling for excuses that they're only making up now on the spot, because their focus with this is more monetization-centric. And keep in mind that Ubisoft as a company has a stake in the Tezos ecosystem, as they recently became a corporate validator. Apart from helping maintain the network, the company is experimenting with liquid proof-of-stake algorithms. This is more about rushing in to try to push this, blockchain ecosystem that they are now directly involved in. Aleph.im founder Jonathan Shamuel, though, is pretty optimistic about the future that NFTs will play in video games, stating that he believes most big publishers will end up proposing in-game NFT support. That would be a great breakthrough, he added, making the gaming experience even more enjoyable. How? Explain it to me. I'm willing to be open-minded about new technology positively affecting games if you explain it to me in clear terms. Nobody, not a single corporation or CEO who said NFTs are the future, have been able to do so, which is why there's a fear that most big publishers will end up proposing in-game NFT support. This seems like an inevitable future given what all of these CEOs keep saying, and that is the future people are trying to prevent. That's why there's so much backlash against Ubisoft Quartz. Make this right now a PR liability for companies to be able to execute, and it'll make them think twice. Companies have tried to claim they'll implement microtransactions and loot boxes responsibly. Look where that got us. As for how people have been reacting to Ubisoft's pretending to understand, where all of the backlash comes from, and the whole notion that they have principles that they'll stick to, well, the reaction to it has been the internet pointing the finger and laughing, which seems to be a common occurrence with Ubisoft. I mean, here is Kotaku's headline: Ubisoft says we understand where NFT hate comes from, does not understand shit. An apt headline, if you ask me. And, you've got people saying stuff like best article headline in years, people coming out swinging with comments like, I actually love NFTs. I've made it really easy and convenient to tell which companies objectively don't have the slightest concern beyond monetary gains. Can I expect Warcraft NFTs this quarter or next? Even those who don't particularly like Kotaku, given its reputation, have come out and said, well, this one headline, gotta say, choice. I usually don't like Kotaku, but I agree with all this NFTs will destroy the gaming industry, and I, for one, don't want it in games. Headline of the year, for once. I actually respect Kotaku for this headline. LOL. So on and so forth. The general sentiment is support for articles that admonish this NFTs initiative that clearly has nothing truly beneficial going for it as far as the customer and gaming enthusiast side of things go. Articles that spotlight the scam and the deceptions surrounding these buzzwords. And that makes me happy to see. While this is no assurance that NFTs will die off, frankly, this just feels like a trend that's growing more and more. The fact that companies can expect backlash if they announce NFTs, the fact that we have seen certain entities like Stalker 2 retreat from their initial attempt to implement NFTs as the backlash got too much, the fact that this is becoming the new microtransactions and loot box controversy, like that level of controversy is now applying to NFTs, where it almost feels like how badly Battlefront 2 was lambasted for its awful implementation of loot boxes, at least is something of a positive sign, something of a decentivizer for companies who now have to weigh their options and gauge whether the amount of backlash they're certainly bound to get is worth the potential profits that they can get, and making them have that conflict within themselves. That is not nothing. And so I hope this is a trend that can continue until NFTs die off as a trend. But so far, enthusiasts are very much against their exploitation in video games, unless there's some entity who can tangibly and in detail and clearly explain how this benefits us. What's in it for us is the question. So far, nobody's had an answer, and that's because I don't believe there is an answer that can justify the existence of NFTs and the harm that they're currently causing. Or at least that's one man's take on NFTs and game companies' push for them, specifically where Ubisoft is concerned. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Ubisoft's latest response to the backlash and all of the sentiments surrounding NFTs, the so-called principles that they have and their promises that they'll use the tech responsibly. Just laughable sentiments coming from a company that's known to be unprincipled. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.